when you build someone else's legacy, how do you stop yourself from disappearing?
He architected Jillian Michaels' global wellness empire from streaming and bestsellers to product lines and licensing deals worth hundreds of millions.
If all you do is play defense, you can never play offense.
While others chased attention, he mastered leverage. He moved brands, lawsuits, and reputations like chess pieces.
Life moves at the speed of a scroll.
For 20 years, he scaled without headlines or noise.
I never want to fuck someone over. I want to sleep at night.
His rules were precise: build slowly, speak rarely, never flinch.
This is a strategy manual disguised as a conversation. You've heard the noise, now meet the operator.
Giancarlo, you became the architect, the one pulling the levers, shaping the brand and building the empire. But when you build someone else's legacy, how do you stop yourself from disappearing?
It's a good question in us. I will tell you that my thought process behind it is no one's handed me a roadmap on how I'm going to do this. So my goal is just to break through the ceiling to get to the next floor. So it's a choice. It's ultimately, if you look at every single established individual in the public space, there's always been a person behind them that has been helping navigate the uncharted waters and really fighting the fight. It's important, in my opinion, that in an exercise of building, you recognize where your strength is. And for me, my strength was to pop in and out, if you will, of quote, the media or the front end of the business and really focus my energy and my time on working behind the scenes. The other thing I will tell you, it's very, very important that you curtail how much you share if you are on the front side of the business, because people will use that if they're diligent in their research, and they will also use it to try to plot your next moves. And even in negotiation strategies, they will try to listen and find what your, quote, tricks of the trade are to get you to potentially succumb to less favorable deal terms. So a little bit of anonymity is important, but when required, it's important to be forward-facing, especially in a business type setting. If you are doing a fireside chat with, let's say, Inc. magazine or the Wall Street Journal, or you are at a entrepreneurs conference. But if you're just doing general media, I've for example, recently, I'll give you this tidbit, you can find this. Jillian and I were part of the 2024 stock challenge for CNBC. And basically what they do is they pair up a celebrity and their friend or their business partner, and they are allowed 2 picks. And you kind of go through that sequencing. And when it was my turn to explain why I chose this stock and that stock, I very simply said to both hosts of the CNBC special, I said, well, I took a page out of Nancy Pelosi's stock portfolio trading book. And they kind of looked at me and they're like, why would you say that? And I was like, well, she doesn't lose. So obviously she knows more than I do. And they were just like, not what they wanted to hear. So you have to be, I don't say you have to be diplomatic, but you should protect your core knowledge and what you're trying to achieve, because people will, and it's happened to me where they will try to use a negotiation point against you, but they're like, hey, I heard you say in this article, or I saw you speak here and you said this. So why are you telling me that? So you have to be very careful.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you like a power or leverage or protection at the same time, right? You're protecting your business, your assets, and the information that comes along with it. So technically, you're playing chess with that whole situation. You're always one step ahead of your competition, or maybe 5 steps ahead of your competition, whereas they're always guessing your next step. So it does come with its inherent benefits, right?
And it does. And I think...
Really.
Yeah, I think you've summarized that the right way. Remember, this game of chess that you're playing in today's environment is 4D, because there has never been greater ease for people to connect with individuals and capture information. And unfortunately, like tools like Wikipedia, for example, which are crowdsourced, they're, in my opinion, awful, because they are basically nothing positive is ever published on Wikipedia. And I will literally sit there and we'll make an announcement, and immediately you'll see a spike in unusual activity on Wikipedia. And you start looking at what people are trying to post on there, which is false or a version of the truth. And you obviously work to revert, as they call it, the vandalism on that site. But it has become a tool where kind of being behind the curtain in a game of chess where your moves are not predicted is important. Absolutely.
Has that ever happened to you in terms of somebody tries to publish negative or false information towards
Weekly.
you?
Weekly, not per se to me, but to our business and or my business partner, Jillian Michaels, all the time. It's part of, as Gadsat says, the mind virus. People are more prone to take a clip of something, expect that clip out of context means this. And it's really kind of what you're seeing in the world today, right? When you look at the presentism that is happening, everyone's judging today's actions on yesterday's morals and values. And it becomes a defensive play. Honestly, the amount of defense one has to play in today's business world, it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a politician, you're a banker, an entrepreneur, a celebrity, an athlete. People are always trying to break you down and suppress the great that you were doing. Fortunately, I have learned over time to develop tough skin and not allow myself the sentiment and feelings that come where people are intentionally trying to hurt your reputation. At the end of the day, those that know me know who I am. Those that have done business with me know what my modus operandi is. And this is the world that we live in. It's predatory. This is what people do. This is how they try to advance. Because they lack so much creativity, they look to squash up.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like a good sign when people do that to you, because
I think it was Madonna. Madonna said, as long as they spell your name right, it's good press.
it is indeed. And you see it happening with PBD clips, right? Like if you watch the full clip, people actually chop that up, take it out of context, and then publish it with a spin. And I guess this is today's society we're living in anyway. Some people are doing it for a malicious motive. Other people are just doing it for clicks to get paid, right? But either way, it's publicity because people pay for those clippers. So
hence the clickbait term. Absolutely. Spot on. I will tell you from a distance, people can think what they want to think about someone like Patrick Bet-David. But if those that are close to him, and fortunately, he's so accessible that many people really know who he is at his core, it doesn't matter. Let them, it's all puffery. Just let them talk. He has plenty of receipts to show for it.
No, indeed. And he's built publicly as well, which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, coming back to building in the dark, I mean, what will people never understand about power unless they've had to build it quietly?
Well, I will tell you, if you start from the bottom, right, nobody knows what your name is, right? Nobody knows what you're contributing, but your work will speak for itself. And I think that is very, very fundamental aspect of how I've lived my professional career and my personal life. Even yesterday, this is a true story. And I asked the gentleman to allow the question to be public on Manette. I got from a Valuetainment employee of 4 years. His name is Joey Ramundi. And he started off with, "Hi, Giancarlo. I don't know if you remember me, but I used to work for you 15 years ago in Los Angeles." If I were a different type of person, he probably wouldn't be reaching out to me. But I always treat everyone, it doesn't matter where you are in an organization or who you are in the public, I treat everyone with the same amount of respect and regard. And that is testament to what you have to do when you are building and how you control that use of that power. Just because you have access or just because you have resource doesn't mean it gives you the right to presume that you are better than someone. Because I believe if you look at the word team, there's no I in the word team, right? You have to let go of your ego and be the best that you can be and know where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are. And then honestly, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you. Be a sponge. Understand what you don't know. See if you can learn it. And if you can't learn it or choose not to learn it, then bring in someone in close that can help you make better decisions. That is a skill set that takes time to develop if you have something to prove. If your purpose is that you want your enterprise or your business or what have you to win your restaurant, it doesn't matter. You need to really check your ego at the door. Know what you know. Say, I need help. There's only 24 hours in a day. I think that you should rest for 8 of them. This mindset of, I got to burn, the candle all the way through. It's just not productive. It creates fatigue. It creates burnout. And ultimately, that is a source of your power that you need to check. And I think a lot of people that have come on the other side of this will say to you, balance, work-life balance, communication, with respect to this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, being direct, being concise, being succinct. These are all traits where you win at the end. It might not be the result that you want right now, but remember, this is not one move. This is a game of chess. And you know what you have on the board functions in different ways when you get to different stages. So I think, the use of power in building your business and building your relationships and forging new ones, I always like to be humble. I always like to come from a place of thank you, I am grateful, and genuinely, that's who I am. I always tell people, I'll let you continue, but I always tell people, no matter how shitty your day is, if you do something for someone you don't know, whether it's help someone who's unhoused or across the street or help someone open a door or hold the door for them, it makes you feel better about who you are. And I think that's what we've lost in the present day. It's become about the me and not about the us. And I think if we can get to a place where there's us again, we will all be happier. I hope.
I totally agree. And I see that's been a big part of your upbringing, right? Your environment when you were growing up. Because I believe that, and you grew up in a time where there was no social media, there was no mobile phones, there was nothing. I mean, same as me, actually, to a certain extent. There was no mobile phones.
We had a Commodore 64. Do you remember that little
64? Exactly. Ataris.
And then we got the 128.
Exactly. That's the era, of the maximum amount of technology that we had around us, right? So we had to play outside. We had to throw rocks and play with sticks and marbles and and speak to people and speak to other children, which developed these skills. We learned how to be humble as a child. We learned humility from the family and the whole environment and culture. But now when this new generation is growing up, they're growing up with iPhones in their hands. They're growing up comparing themselves horizontally to other people who are living fake lives. So do you think it's going to get better? You brought up a very important point of humble humility and leave your ego at the door, which is totally true for being successful playing 4D chess long term. But do you think that this generation has the patience and the attention span to do that?
Well, no, they don't. And it's not their fault. Because while you and I'm 50 years old, right? When we used to have to do a report, let's just say if we were doing a report on a specific planet in the solar system, what was our process? We would go to the library, we would look through the card catalog, we would find an encyclopedia, we would find said book, we might pull out some National Geographic magazine, and we would have to read and retain and highlight and take notes. We were taught to learn by creating a connection between the written word, visualizing, and then putting it into our hard drive, and hopefully our buffer was able to retain it. In today's world, what I see is the ability for Gen Z and Gen Alpha to essentially survive in business is adaptability. Because what's happened is everything comes at them at the speed of a thumb scroll. So the attention span, there's no longer the ability to really retain information the way we would. I mean, we could sit here and talk about history the way you were taught about this, the War of 1812, and how I was taught it from two different points of view, growing up in two different places, two different countries. But today that doesn't work like that, nor is there, it doesn't seem, based on my friends' children that are young teens or even into teenage or even younger ones, they all want to be founders. They all want to be instant millionaires, billionaires. But I never thought to myself when I was young that my goal was to be a millionaire or a billionaire. My goal was I wanted to work hard, and I wanted to, like I said earlier, I wanted to break through that ceiling because my name was worth nothing, and all I could do was show the quality of my work, and hopefully I was encapsulated in an environment that would celebrate that and move me forward. But today, these kids don't have to be in the trenches on a battlefield anymore. It's very different. Whether you're an actor and you go for a casting, you're just submitting a video. You're not walking into a room reading in front of a casting director and two producers anymore. Okay? If you are, just look at Formula One. Look at Formula One, because I know you did a podcast that I enjoyed not too long ago. When we were growing up, we didn't have Formula One simulators and esports. Now, there are kids that don't even have a driver's license that perform so well in this computerized age of sport technology, where teams are signing them to their quote esports league and then giving them the opportunity to work their simulator to get data for their regular drivers. I mean, think about that, right? Think about the muscle that they're developing. So when we look at today's generation, we could take the position of, oh, they have it easier. Oh, they have this. No, they actually have it harder because they don't know how to write cursive. They don't know how to, write by hand. Everything is a voice message. They don't know how to connect. You and I can meet at an airport lounge and spark up a conversation and probably speak for a few hours and not run out of anything to say. When I'm at an airport lounge and I see an adult male with headphones on playing, what's that game? Fortnite. I'm just like, wow, like that's what it's become. You know what I mean? Even in public or on a plane versus reading a book, listening, or talking to someone. And so, the question really is I'm glad that I am willing to be a student still. I don't want to ever stop learning until I take my last breath. And the goal is, how can I learn from these younger generations? And they're very creative. They're very, very creative because they understand the adaptability of the technology. Like I said, it's their survival instinct. So when you hand a child who's a year and a half, 2 years old, an iPhone, and they can't even speak yet, and they want you to unlock the phone, the fact that it's intuitive to them goes to show that their brain has been already developed in a different way. Listen, I think time will tell, but, enter artificial intelligence and super intelligence. They will have aids that we never had, but at the same time, they will have it, I believe, because they will be less of what we used to do manually has been now taken over. These repetitive tasks, if you will, have been taken over by machines.
Yeah. So it comes down to compromise, right? So you excel in something. That kid who has an iPhone at 1 year old, whether he knows it or not because of his parents, that's probably going to be, a breeze with technology.
Yes.
So there's going to have a negative effect on the other side. Everything has an opportunity cost, same as business, right? If you're allocating capital in one place, there's an opportunity cost somewhere else or a compromise that you have to make in one way or another.
Well, let me ask you a question. You say there's a negative trade-off, but how do we know there's ultimately a negative trade-off?
It doesn't have to be negative, but
right.
It's an opportunity cost, right? So
Absolutely. But everything has an opportunity cost, right?
everything has an opportunity cost.
And so, that's what, quote, your cost benefit analysis would be, right? So we would look at something and say, this is the way it was done. This is the way it can be done. And this is the way it probably will be done. Somewhere in between on that, let's make a Venn diagram, exists where we will land. I look at is basically, what is that risk, right? Because risk is essentially the rent that you pay to live outside of that box or that Venn diagram. So I don't think that they see it the way we see it, because remember, we have a book that we've been building along the way. They don't have that book. They just imagine, think about how much content you ingest on a daily basis. If you are on social media, if you were, just swiper all day long. Virgil, his last name escapes me. He was the creative director for Off-White and a bunch of Louis Vuitton, what have you. He said, life moves at the speed of a scroll. Think about that. Life moves at the speed of a scroll. And so I look closely, like I was with a friend of mine whose kid is at the University of Miami. He's a second-year student. He's in a real estate program, and he's working for a big developer in Miami and in New York. He's an intern there, and he came to me. He's like, we have all of these commercial properties. And he says, I think we should use some form of tokenization to transact. Dubai is doing it. Why couldn't we be the first developer or one of the first developers in the United States to use this approach? And I said, well, first and foremost, you've got regulatory issues that you got to work through, right? Dubai is a very different, structure. The UAE is set up very different. And he's like, but this is the future. This is the future. I was like, again, but you are asking people to move away from fiat that might have a fluctuation value that's minimal, at least with US currency, to something where the value can be today X and tomorrow or in an hour could be Y. And he's like, but this is the future. This is the future. It's hard to argue with that. He has a point. He has a point. We've introduced a new form of digitized currency where if you and I believe the transaction is valuable and you want to, you want to do a peer-to-peer wallet transfer, what's stopping us from doing it? It's a different mind game. But when you go sit down with a banker who's been at it for 35 years and is 2 years from retirement, he's like, I'm not going to take that risk. I'm not going to take that risk. That's really like where we are. It's like the gatekeepers will change, and look at how it's happened in television. The streamers and YouTube are the biggest networks. The biggest networks.
Yeah, no, indeed.
In a very short amount of time.
Yeah. It's moved like an exponential curve, right? So in terms of the tokenization, I mean, there's a lot of people who came up with that idea, right? Let's say, I mean, it is the future. BlackRock is investing in RWA, real world assets. They have a huge portfolio in that, and they've invested in the tech behind it as well. In terms of the regulatory issues, I mean, regulation moves as fast as a snail does, right? And half the time they don't even know what they're talking about. No. And, we have the Houses of Parliament here, and there are a few people that I know are advising the government on AI, quantum, blockchain, tokenization, and real world assets. From the regulatory standpoint, they're even refusing to acknowledge that a asset can be broken up into multiple different pieces.
Correct.
And then each person owns that individual piece. I mean, they're trying.
It's so foreign to them, like that the fact that there's a decentralized ledger that shows authenticity in the transaction. But again, this is one of those examples where a storm sinks one ship, but it fuels another if it can catch the wind, right? Because while there's all these debates going on, look at the whales and how much of crypto they own, and whether you're into just the known ones like Bitcoin and Ethereum, or if you're looking at more of the future stuff like Casper, right? It's fascinating for people to try to grasp this idea. I mean, think about if you had $500 to throw around back in 2009, 2010. Imagine if you would have bought $500 worth of Bitcoin. What that's worth today. It's unfathomable that you could have such a small fiat investment and have so much worth on the other side of it. Should you have held? It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it is. And on the flip side of that, I mean, if you read that white paper and you believed in it and you understood it, I mean, even if you didn't understand it, to be honest with you, back then, I didn't fully understand it. However, I believed in what it represented, right? However, I wish I held more Bitcoin. I mean, for the record.
Yeah. I remember one night I was in Mexico. I'll never forget this. I was in Mexico with a group of friends. This is back in 2017. And we were at a nightclub and the tab came, and one of the guys didn't have his portion in cash and didn't have a credit card on him. He's like, "Can I just transfer you some Bitcoin?" I said, "Absolutely." Worst mistake he could have ever made.
That was an expensive drink round.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's it's the cost. I mean, on the other side, there's the values on top of it as well. Like, what values were you unwilling to compromise, even when like money, fame, or expansion tempted otherwise?
Very simple. I never want to fuck someone over. That's my fundamental rule. I don't care. The relationship is more important to me. If it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. But for the most part, I have always been the plaintiff in matters outside of some frivolous, nonsense that got dismissed because there was no merit. But for the most part, that has always been, I want to sleep at night. I want to have a good conscience. And the reality is you can't scale your business when there's chaos. You just can't. It's such a distraction. Like, if all you do is play defense, you can never play offense. And to me, it's better to walk away from situations or unwind situations. Everything has a solution. We sent the man to the moon and brought him back, right? We went from the cave to the moon. It's just not worth it. To me, money's already made. You just got to go find it. I'm not going to, if there's a pot of money here that's to be fought over, it depends on what it's for. Obviously, if someone's, owes you and wrongfully hasn't paid you and you've done the work and you've generated the sales, then yes, fight for that. But the thought of trying to play coy and trying to outsmart someone, it just doesn't work, because the world is very, very small. It'll come back to you. It'll definitely come back to you.
No, 100%. That it's like that Machiavellian theory does not work anymore, right? Your word is your bond. It's that old school way of doing business of trust, right?
That's right.
And where does your internal code come from? I mean, did you grow up in a God-fearing family? I mean, was religion anything to do with it? Your parents?
Yeah, good question. So my father was born in Italy and my mother was born in Puerto Rico. They were both hardworking individuals. My dad, a chemical engineer, and my mother, a public school administrator. They gave us great education, great love, great family environment. Religion wasn't at the forefront, but I did go to Catholic school every Tuesday from first grade all the way to eighth grade. And that was because my mom's like, if you ever wanted to get married in a Roman Catholic church, I wanted you to have the confirmation and the communion and all the things that would go with it. Faith was not a driving factor in the family, but it was it was used as a form of tradition. Christmas Eve Mass, Easter Mass. When a family member was ill, we would go to church to show respect and what have you. And I personally, I love travel to Europe, when you go to France, when you go to Italy, Spain. I mean, these churches are they're works of art. And, if you separate whatever it means to you, that's fine. But when you stand there, it's just so majestic. And I always say to myself, I'm like, why can't we ever do this? Like, why can't we build buildings like this? Why can't we do frescoes like this? Why doesn't this exist anymore? You stand in the Sistine Chapel and you're like, oh my God. Listen, I think my faith in myself comes really from my parents supporting all of my young endeavors. When it would snow outside and I was 7, 8 years old, my friends would go sledding and I asked my mom, can I go knock on some of the neighbors' door and shovel their snow to make some money? Right? I always had that business mind. I were always trying to figure out, I'm like, hey, I want to get this. So is it okay if I wash some of the neighbors' cars? And always did something to earn my money. So then it was my money that I could do what I wanted with it. And my dad was always very fair. Let's say if I wanted something that cost $80, he goes, I'll make you a deal. You earn 40 and I'll match the 40. And it taught me that gesture of meeting me halfway, because obviously he's like, hey, what's an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old? How are they going to make $40 outside of getting, money from grandma or grandpa, birthday or the tooth fairy or what have you? And that really instilled in me the value of what the dollar means. But it taught me as I got older that money has no value if you don't trade it for something. Money buys you time, and it gives you the ability to, in my opinion, it gives you the ability to play your game different. If you are not chasing the dollar because you're living a lavish lifestyle and you can't keep up, you're going to make different business decisions versus those that sign a deal, know that this potential revenue is going to come in the next 24 months. They're out already spending it before it's been earned. They're not thinking about force majeure. They're not thinking about retailers going out of business, supply chain disruptions, whatever have you. The movie doesn't get released, like all kinds of stuff. Doesn't matter what business you're in. There is an inherent risk in any transaction. So don't obviously count your chickens before they hatch. But I think that, to me, what my parents gave me from the form of respect, trust, and the ability to identify who I was and let me build that from a young age, that comes from them. I mean, my sister, she's an emergency medicine doctor. She's 5 years younger. When we were young, her favorite game was to play, if you have a cut, let me dress it. Oh, you have, let's pretend you have a broken arm. Let me bandage it. She always wanted to be a doctor. Hence, she's an emergency medicine doctor. So my parents always kind of cultivated that culture of let them be what they want to be, what they strive to be, and they will find success. And I'm very grateful to my parents for that. Very, very.
No, definitely. Whatever you've mentioned, I always try to look at it in a different way, right? You brought up contractual elements, which a lot of people don't think about. They sign contracts and they put them in a drawer in business, right? And, when I hear that, I'm asking, where does that come from? Do you think that's the immigrant mentality, right? What your parents had to go through and what's naturally instilled in the DNA, because it was survival more than anything else, right? You didn't see yourself as a victim. Your dad didn't victimize you before he said, look, I'll match the other 40. He was teaching you life. He was teaching you business, right? And I thought that in this day and age, people are too soft with their kids. They don't teach them these lessons. they're plugged into the matrix, as you say, right? So, it's transpired in a, would you say that it comes down to the immigrant mindset, quote unquote out?
I will tell you this and then I'll tell you what I think about that. But it's kind of a little unconventional, but anytime a friend of mine's kids, I'm like the favorite Uncle G, they'll be like, oh my God, I came in second place. And I'm like, you know what second place is? They're like, what? I'm like the first loser. And they'll kind of just look at me. And I was like, and they'll just be like, what? And the parent will look at me and I was like, listen, you don't get a trophy in life for everything. Okay. It's very, very important. You put effort, but your effort in this particular case, based on a myriad of circumstances, didn't allow you to be number one. You still have room to grow to number one. So celebrate this, but build on this. This doesn't mean you stop. This means you keep going. And that is exactly the point you're making, because the kids today are so coddled and everything's like, we don't talk to them that way. I always say to all my friends' kids that are like boys, they're 13, 14. I'm like, wait till you get punched in the face the first time. And believe me, you'll understand what life is going to become. And that's the thing. We are not from a distance, and I don't have children, so I can opine on this because I have a lot of access to my friends' kids and family. You're not doing them any service by telling them that this is okay and this is okay. Everything has a lesson. We don't learn when we win. We learn when we fail, right? That is the ultimate entry point to learn. And that doesn't mean that because you win, it stops there. It means it's like, how do you get momentum from that place to the next place? And it's a bridge, and it's what you choose to do with it, because whatever you did to win there, that's part of your skill set that you're going to put in your toolbox, and you're going to pull it out when you get to now something more challenging. I just see it. I've never, and I don't want to use the term soft, but when I remember myself at the age of 13, and my 13 was not a 15, 16 today. It was, we were tough kids. And it's because I grew up in New York City and then in New Jersey, but life was different. We were thinking about, hey, whose car are we going to, whose parent is sleeping and whose car are we going to take out and go for a joyride when you're 13 and 14? And oh no, we used to get in trouble when we were younger doing stupid stuff with the police, and the cops would give you a strong talking to, but it wasn't a video. There was no social media. There was no permanent record of this moment. And any community you lived in, 9 out of 10 times, the local law enforcement would know who these kids are and their parents and all of that. But we pushed and we tested and we pushed and we tested. But the consequences were different. Also, the types of things that were going on weren't as malicious. I don't remember, honestly, bullying in school was just, this guy used to pick on people. There was no, look at what just happened in New York City yesterday. How is this guy walking on Park Avenue with, a long rifle, an M4 or an AR-15, and nobody, people are so asleep at the wheel. There was time for, to lock the doors. All these questions are going to come up. Like, where was the failure? I know that area very well. I've been to that building for meetings. You just say to yourself, like, how is it possible? And you know why? Everyone's got their head in their phone. Everyone's got their head down, and people like, that's got nothing to do with me. I don't want to be involved. So I think, our future generations, and these are the generations that are going to run the world, that are going to lead us, that are going to get us through, from point A to point B in the future, and we're going to depend on them. They just have it's just a softer upbringing. And I just don't see how it benefits them by telling them that everything is pink and happy. It just doesn't work like that. That's not life. It's just not life. We see it with a lot of kids outside, at least I can speak in this country. A lot of kids around the world suffer, and they have a very hard life, a very, very hard life. But, not everyone's born into the same situation. But I definitely don't think telling your kids that everything is pink and happy is the way to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. And telling your kids that their favorite color should be pink and be happy regardless of what they like is another story. But, my point there was, do you think it breeds the two extremes? Now, this is something that crossed my mind. You've got figures like Andrew Tate, who have risen, and his message is broadly positive, right? The underlying message. Deliverability, questionable, obviously, but in terms of the underlying message to young men, disenfranchised men, work hard, don't rely, don't victimize yourself, go to the gym, make money, stand on your own 2 feet, right? To a certain extent on that side of it. On the other side, you've got the media, and there was some really crazy, I mean, I'm sitting here watching, videos online of discussions, which is surreal. I'm thinking to myself, are these discussions actually happening? Is this real, or am I still sleeping? Why are you could say these two extremes coming out, where one side he's saying, to young men, work hard, stand on your own 2 feet, right? Take away the positive from that, leave the satire and clipped comments and content out of it. And on the other side, it's the total opposite of it. It's like, do what you feel. Where are we in society today? Because if you want to be successful in business, if you want to, in business, you mentioned right at the beginning, you have tough skin. And society is teaching otherwise. So how do you see that conflict in today's society?
Well, listen, I think ultimately it starts at home. I had a bedrock foundation of trust, responsibility, and someone to answer to. We would sit at the table every day and we would talk. How was your day? How was school? What did you learn? What did your teacher teach you about this? That was my routine for the first, 15 years of my life. Once you start getting to third, fourth year of high school, things are a little different just because you have a lot more bandwidth, if you will, with how much rope your parents give you in my particular case. I think the notion of this kind of bifurcated conversation of you should do this, but then you should be laissez-faire on this side, it's very difficult. It's a mixed message. And depending on the type of character you are, people are very easily swayed. Look, I'm not a fan of Andrew Tate. I don't listen to him. I do know some of the things that he said, which, in my opinion, are appalling at times and distasteful and go really against my core DNA. But with that said, he's platformed because it works for him. And there are people that subscribe to that type of messaging, whether it's for shock value or they genuinely believe that there's a path forward. The other thing is, sure, if we live in a society where having Patek watches and Rolexes and exotic cars and beautiful women and yachts and all of this shit is what drives you, then of course he's going to win, like Dan Blazarian and all these other guys that are out there that are doing this. When I was growing up, my heroes were guys like Jack Welch. Even after he left, then you realize, wow, a lot of the business decisions that he made really unraveled the company. We were talking about the contract before, right? Where the economy turned and interest rates this, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, GE Capital was like the main lender behind a lot of these debunked mortgages and what have you. But when you looked at it from my point of view and what he was doing and how he had turned that company around, that was aspiration. This is a guy who took a very small company and diversed it into so many different things and made it from imaging to engines to you name it. It's a mortgage lending. I'm not sure, because for me, I don't subscribe to this, but I'm not sure how the nexus between raising a young man and a young woman today, for example, young women, some of them that I know want to be an influencer. Others of them want to be entrepreneurs. Others get married. And others are trying to figure out if it's worth, now this is what's sad, is it worth going to medical school or law school or engineering school because the debt that they have to take on to build a career? So now you have all of these different, now think about that conversation. All of a sudden you've taken away, you want to be, one of my buddies is a neurosurgeon. He's from high school, he loved science, biology, all of that. The amount of debt that he has because he's a neurosurgeon is insane, but he loves what he does. Another member in his family pivoted because he saw how much debt he's amassed. So the question really becomes is, how do these people influence young men? Like, listen, I have such strict rules, even with my business partner's kid who's 13. I had him the other day. We went to an event and I took him and he made some comments. And I was saying to him, at a certain point, when you start getting older, you're no longer cute. And so some things are not tolerated or seen the same way it would be seen if you were younger. And like he was asking me about like, why is that? And I said, well, you're changing. You don't even realize it. You know, the same way we mark the wall and you're getting taller, things are happening. And as you get older, there's less and less tolerance for a lot of the things that you're going to do that you did as a child. But again, that's him testing boundaries and trying to understand. But he'll tell me who are his favorite people. He's like, oh, I love Charlie Kirk. I'm like, how do you even get to a guy like Charlie Kirk? Like, you're 13 years old. Like, why do you like Charlie Kirk? And I'm like, I wasn't political when I was that age, right? But this is what's in the zeitgeist. This is what's in the narrative. This is what they're hearing at home. This is what they're, you know, the fact that kids are, you know, you're a libtard because blah, blah, blah. I'm like, don't use that word, man. It's like not a good word. Do you understand what it even means? And they're like, well, I hear it all the time at home. And I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah. And so, you know, they're sponges, they're moldable. So the question becomes, I don't know if there's a real answer to your question because they're being sent Scud missiles in every direction and whatever can kind of latch onto them. He told me when he plays Fortnite, they're on headsets and they're actually talking about all of these things while playing Fortnite. And I'm like, so do you even know who you're playing with? He goes, I know an ID, but I don't know who really it is. I'm like, so you could be playing with me, a 50-year-old man. He goes, yes, I could be. And I had no idea. So it's crazy, the amount of influence. And I can't imagine as a parent not being able to contain and control who my child has access to. For some things, it's great. I mean, you know, he loves PBD. He met PBD and he was like, this is amazing. He loves Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk and PBD are two very different people. So I'm just hoping that these future generations are able to, quote, get an information diet that's balanced, where they're able to get from here, from there, and then they come into being their own person and serve it up in the world, hopefully the right way. I hope.
No, indeed. And when I mentioned the comparison between the two, it was more of this information war that's going on, right? It's very difficult to find the middle ground. Like, what is the middle ground? I know what the middle ground is based on my upbringing, based on my own personal beliefs and how I navigate this world, right? And what I want to achieve. But for somebody growing up, that's totally different. And, you know, moving on to yourself, I mean, you grew up with your own beliefs, right? You grew up with your own experience playing the game. But what parts of the game did you have to unlearn as you matured?
Leadership is not about being the loudest. It's about learning to listen, because that, to me, in the beginning, I told you, it's about surrounding yourself with people that are smarter than you, that understand things that you don't understand and have different experiences. That, to me, is the fundamental thing that you have to develop, is the ability as a leader not to be the loudest, not to necessarily want to, quote, flex your power, but you lead by listening and learning and allowing those that bring value in the organization or the conversation in, because that's how we kind of rise all tides. That's probably the hardest thing. It was very difficult for me to do because in my mind, I already have an opinion. And I'm like, just say it. We'll get to the point. Let's go. Too many words. Just get to it. And so I learned in time and honest reviews, right? Because in leadership, you should have your direct reports review you. What could I do better as your leader, right? And you have to be open to constructive criticism, but I would say listening. If you listen and you're willing to adapt, and it doesn't mean that everything you hear you have to act on, but if you are willing to listen, you can really build scaled through that. You remember, you're not going to scale in a chaotic environment. You're only going to scale when there's a clear path ahead. Like you have to, you know, in America, we blazed the Oregon Trail when we were heading west. Listening. It's the most important thing that people, it's been lost on people. And part of it is because they don't interact with people the way they used to. You know, remember, I don't know if this was like for you, but when I was young and I'd have to sit at the table with adults, and there was no iPad and there was no phone and there was no coloring book, I'd have to sit there and you'd listen and you wouldn't interrupt until you were said, yes, what do you have to say? Or you were asked a question. But again, you know, it's very hard to expect the generations today to be able to operate the way we operate because we just had different core values. that we were forged with. It's not, I always tell people, I'm like, you can't expect him to know. He just doesn't. And you just can't.
And that just makes me think that, is society going to be the same, right? You said you were sitting at a dinner table, listening is a core skill. It's instilled in you since you were young. And you speak when you're spoken to, or you're at least attentive because you know that you're going to be spoken to. It's like you're in a conference room. But if all of these small skills, which are so important, at the top of your list, right, as such a successful entrepreneur and individual.
Thank you.
That holds weight. And when I look at the other side, I'm seeing that the new generation, they listen, but they're not really listening, right? Sometimes things are misinterpreted or misconstrued based on the information, the way the information is delivered, psyops, or the media that they're consuming, which is no shortage of that. How do you see that affecting society moving forward?
It's attention. The attention span is not there. Think about this one. When you were growing up, I'm sure you had vinyl records, LPs, long plays, right? What would you do? Would you put the needle on the record, and let every song play all the way through? Is that how you would listen to your music? And then you would flip it over? Or would you be skipping song to song?
No, I'd listen to the whole thing.
Right. You had no choice. Would you read the liner notes in the album? Would you look at the lyric sheet? Would you read? These are things, right? So I used to sit and I used to take an LP and I would read, and I'm like, oh, this guy produced it. This guy engineered it. This guy played drums. This guy played guitar. This girl sang background vocals. But it taught us patience. Let it simmer. Nowadays, what do? Almost all music is 2 minutes long, thanks to Spotify, right? And TikTok. And you just you get to a certain point in the song and you're like, next. Nothing gets to simmer anymore. Nothing gets to breathe. Everything is, I want it now. I mean, even when we were getting on this, I was like, I'm just getting the wheel of death. I don't know what you like me to do, right? We have gotten so used to now, as opposed to let's be present. Let's be in the moment. And that ties back to how everything in the world works today. Our news cycle, our attention span when it comes to what movie opened up last weekend. Do you know? In theaters. The last there's 2 movies that I can think of that have opened in the last month. One is Superman, actually 3. The other one is Jurassic World and the Formula One movie. And the Formula One movie, just because it was all over the place. It was omnipresent. But I couldn't tell you what's opening this weekend. I couldn't tell you what artist is dropping a new album. Nobody drops albums anymore. They're all singles, and they'll put out 5, 6 singles. And then, all of a sudden your Spotify playlist or your Apple Music playlist has the rest of the songs that were just quietly released. But everything is now. So how do we expect to retain information or enjoy it when you're on to the next? Give me more. I mean, look at watching consumption habits of television. I have gotten to a point where I will not watch a series unless it's fully loaded. So The Bear, I wait. They announced all 10 episodes of season 3 or season 4 are out, then I'll watch it. But back in the day, I used to love Sunday nights to watch Tony Soprano. I would look forward to appointment television, but I don't have the patience for it anymore. And it's not because I have, there's series I haven't even watched, because I haven't watched Yellowstone. I haven't watched 1883. I haven't watched 1923. I haven't even watched Game of Thrones. And I'm saving these for the future where I can be just immerse myself in a month of binge watching content. But that's what they've done to us, right? They've conditioned us to, I want it now and I don't want to wait. And honestly, I would rather go work out, go for a walk, go for a drive, listen to a book, do something active than be sitting in front of a television. I don't even, on airplanes, I have a rule. I don't watch anything. I get through. I listen to all my podcasts roughly on depending on 1.2 to 1.5 speed. And everything that I download, I force myself to listen. I just started a new book yesterday called The Shock Doctrine, which is interesting because it kind of talks about what happened in New Orleans after Katrina with the public school system, where there was 63 schools. And immediately after Katrina, there was only 4 public schools left. Everything went private and they fired 4,800 teachers from the teachers union. But these are the kinds of things I want to know, because that's what allows me to sit next to you at an airport and you're like, oh, I'm a teacher in New Orleans. I'm like, let me ask you a question. Is it true Because that's what's exciting to me, right? That's what fuels my interest. And I think that's what I'm hoping the younger generations can find their version of how I personally attack knowledge. That's what's interesting to me. But I don't know. I mean, a part of me has changed. Like I just said, with TV, I've got to watch it all one after the other. Otherwise, I just can't do it. I just can't do it.
Speaking of change, if what part of your old self would destroy your current life if it was still alive?
I would definitely say become much more of a guider than a grinder. I think that's been very important and transformative in my life. And by that, I mean, I no longer want to be first to do things. I like to watch from the sidelines. I have done many things first and learned very quickly that when you are first, you will be bested because you're so focused on getting out your product. And for example, let's use the Nintendo Wii. So back in 2008, Nintendo launched the Wii Fit balance board. I had a friend at the time who was a banker turned video game financier, and currently he's the CEO of Atari. He said to me, hey, I just found out that the Japanese, the Nintendo, are launching a dev kit for this balance board for exercise to be tied into their first party games, whether tennis, what have you. But there's a dev kit so developers can develop games using this tech. So he's like, we should come up with something. So if you can Google this, you'll see Jillian Michaels Fitness Ultimatum 2009. So we put out basically an adventure game where you had to do exercise moves to advance in the game. So think kind of Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of journey. And we released in a 5-year span, 5 games. On the second year, we started also releasing Xbox. And I think we did 1 year or 2 years of Sega. Well, all of a sudden, you've got this video game franchise, right? Where you have all of these different things and all of these games and all these themes. But then I'm like looking at the trajectory of like Madden football and Tony Hawk's video game. And I'm like, why is their trajectory so different? Well, the reality is by default, one is a league, right? The other one is a sport, and mine was an individual. So I was like, there's no way to make the individual a league, and there's no way to make the individual a sport. But in hindsight, when you Monday morning quarterback everything, I was like, maybe the strategy should have been this and limit the length of the deal and then gone to one of those developers or either EA Sports or I can't remember the name of the Tony Hawk one. I think Activision. And go and be like, hey, we sold 1.8 million copies of this game in a 3-week period. And in the follow-up release, we sold 3.2 million. Let's do a game. It would have been completely different because now it would have been potentially what happened with Madden. It wasn't about John Madden. It was just about football, right? But these are the things. Because I was first and seized an opportunity, and I'm grateful. Listen, it was a fantastic opportunity. But when you take a step back and you have time and you can reflect and you look at what's kind of happening, all of a sudden, I never thought that the Wii Fit balance board would become another accessory that goes in a drawer. All of a sudden, the Kinect camera came out with Xbox, with Microsoft. So there's all of this technological advancement that's happening that we needed for our gameplay. But those other games just needed the controller. So, these are the things that I think about when I'm on a walk and I'm like, oh, I wonder if this, and then I'll call my friend. I'm like, hey, who's doing this? And I'd love to talk to so-and-so. But that's how I think about things. I'm always revisiting what I've done in the past, not to criticize or critique, but to think, knowing what I know now and where the market went, how would I change my thinking if I did something new moving forward? I love that mental exercise. It's a game of jiu-jitsu. It's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah. And in terms of, you mentioned walking while you do you walk a lot? Does it give you time to think? I mean, I read the book, Silence is the Key by, Ryan Holiday.
That's exactly.
All great ideas come in a moment of silence or when a man walks, right? As they say in the old.
On average.
So what did...
Yeah, on average, weather permitting, I try to walk 5 to 7 miles a day. And obviously I say weather permitting because in Miami, sometimes I get stuck in the store. But I find, and a lot of times like I said, I'll listen to a podcast, and then sometimes I'll notice where I'm just deep in thought, and I'll have to rewind 30 minutes of the podcast because I don't know where my mind went, but I'm hearing, but it's almost like when you sleep, let's say with like brown noise or white noise to kind of block out the sound to deepen your sleep, having that auditory stimulation of hearing conversation gives me the ability to hyper focus on being in that moment. It's like F1 drivers say, like, even though they're going so fast, everything slows down for them, right? They're seeing everything happen their reaction times are just different. They're processing things differently. So I some of my best ideas that have been, that have sparked up have come from just silence, where I'm able to block out and look at what's happening around me, but I can't hear what's happening around me with the noise canceling. Not always the safest thing, because sometimes cars aren't paying attention depending on where I'm walking. But there's something to be said to turning off all the stimulation and allowing your brain open up those neural pathways and think about what you're going to say. One of my things that I love to do, let's say if I have to speak somewhere and I pretty much know a framework, I will record myself and I'll watch myself. And I'll watch myself for several things: facial expression, hand gestures, pacing, intonation of certain words. All of this stuff is an art. It's very easy. And that skill I recommend to anyone that's going to go into a meeting with people that they don't know or trying to establish a business. It's like, what's the first step? Draw a connection. Look around the room. Oh, I love your watch. I have one. Or I've been watching that watch. It's a very hard timepiece to get. Oh, I see that photo. Is that Costa Rica? Yeah, I went ziplining there too. Draw that connection, because automatically it makes the person or persons that you're meeting feel that you're interested in them outside of just more of what you're going to talk about. I always like to find out, where are you from? Great. I love this. Can you tell me about this? Have you ever been this? Where do you recommend I go? Can you give me some suggestions? It turns into you're humanizing the conversation as opposed to being so transactional. And I think that's what's missing with a lot of people.
No, indeed. And people do business with people, right? They buy into you first before they ever want to do business with you anyway, right? And it's a trust factor. And, you've been the operator behind a powerful public brand. Jillian Michaels is hugely successful. Have you maintained or lost your sense of self during that phase? Or has it grown you in a very special way?
It's grown me because she's infectious. Her drive to constantly be evolving is fascinating. This is a woman who is self-made, who used to own a private gym facility that became one of the most recognized health and wellness experts in the world. It didn't come easy. There was a lot of work to be done, a lot of sleepless nights, and a lot of concern where we were building and factors and forces bigger than us were trying to hurt us. We sued YouTube and Lionsgate for posting our content without compensating us, to the tunes of hundreds of millions of views of each video, so billions combined. And everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was making a mistake, and we won. And that's the thing. Her tenacity and her drive forces me to level up. And I think that's very important in any time that you have a business relationship. We understand what our roles are. I understand what her strengths are, what her weaknesses are, and vice versa. She knows how to lean on me when she needs to. She also knows how to give me my space. It's very, very important that you have this simpatico type relationship when you are in business, because it cannot be, 100% all the time. PBD has it with Tom. They're very connected. Tom is tremendously intelligent and valuable, and PBD is as well, but they know how to complement each other. And that's what you need. And, for me, Jillian is my work wife. We built something together. She's family first, but we just happen to be business partners. And my drive to continue comes from her. She will tell me, here's an idea, and I'll see if I can commercialize it and monetize it if it makes sense. Or I'll come to her and saying, hey, because we're doing all of these things, I think we should, like right now, I'm working on potentially, we haven't toured since we did a tour in 2013 in the US, in 2014 in the UK and Australia, in 2015 in Canada, and in 2016 we did a fitness tour. The tour between 2013 and 2015 was called Maximize Your Life. It was about self, science, and sweat. And we broke all of that down. Now she hasn't done a tour in a little over 10 years. So now I'm in conversations with touring again for next year, but we would do it different. We're not going to be on a bus traveling the country and, 32 shows the first leg and, flying into Glasgow and starting in Edinburgh, Birmingham, Cardiff, Wales, and finishing in London. We'll do fly-in shows where we get there on a Friday and we do a show Saturday night and then we fly out Sunday. And, there's different ways of doing things, but I'm like, if you're always in the media and if you're always doing podcasts and you captured a new audience, let's go have a conversation and do an evening with you and let people and it's not going to be about talking about lunges and stuff like that. It's going to be a completely different conversation. And that's kind of what excites me, is the idea of putting something together from, idea to fruition and connecting those dots. But now I'm doing things with a completely different network. That first tour was with Live Nation. Well, the world has changed, right? So now people that used to work at Live Nations are representing theaters on their own. And there's just so many different pieces to it. With hindsight, you become that much more refined in your business and your business aptitude. So for me, that's an exciting thing I'm looking to do and just continue to build. We have a new book coming out next year. So again, now you're supporting this virtuous circle of information by having all of these different mediums of where you can message. So there's a lot of good stuff in the hopper.
No, that's great. I mean, when I saw her on Her Take, and I was watching one of the episodes on YouTube. I mean, she's infectious. She is infectious. You could see that when she speaks, the way she narrates, the way she enunciates the words or jumps in and, gives her take or brings it back to a certain point if somebody else on the panel has missed it or misunderstood. She is infectious.
Yeah, she calls balls and strikes all day long. Her take is all PBD's it's all his vision. It's all his vision. He has a very specific vision for what that show will become. And it's in its early infancy. I think we're like 12 or 13 episodes in, but he has great vision for that opportunity.
No, I mean, he's done very well on that. So, doing the tour is a no-brainer. And, as you mentioned, the flying tour at the same time. But was there a time where it almost collapsed, maybe for yourself or what you were doing in one of your past businesses? And how did you navigate that and bring it back?
Look, I mean, we had a business during the pandemic that we had no choice but to divest and sell the assets in the business just due to supply chain issues, the cost of raw material. There's only so much, as a coffee company, there's a cold brew company, organic. There's nothing, there's only so much you can do sometimes. Sometimes the factors are greater and you need to recognize that is not failure. That is just you're dealing with the market conditions. And there's only so much you can push that ball, up that boulder, up that hill before, your wings are going to melt. It's knowing when to pull the plug. And because something falls apart doesn't mean that you have failed. It just means that that's what needed to happen in that moment to learn the lessons that we learned. But no one saw that the world was going to shut down. I mean, unless it is just, you have no choice, right? When things overnight, I mean, this is what's scary about the tariffs right now, right? One of our businesses, we get some raw material from Brazil, hoping that Brazil in the next 48 hours, 72 hours figures out how to get a deal done with the United States because 55% tariff is going to affect that particular SKU. But that is the reality of what we have to deal with. And, the question becomes do you take the compression or do you take profit from other SKUs to offset that? It's difficult if it's a hero SKU in your business where the majority of the volume comes from. So these are all the things that you have to deal with. And some businesses, when you're like in manufacturing, for example, let's just say coffee, you could buy on futures. But remember, you're agreeing to a price today that could go up or could go down the road. And so you'll feel like, we shouldn't have done it if the prices go down, but if the prices go up, you're like, oh, thank God we did it, right? It's, these are real world decisions that have real consequences. And to me, I'm all about knowing when to cut our losses and moving on. It's just, you cannot, like I said before, you cannot build when you are in chaos. You can't play offense when you're playing defense. And sometimes it's better to divest and unwind and sell the assets and move on. Let it be someone else's problem.
No, indeed. And what do you see now in yourself, in the culture, in the market, that most people are missing, especially in this sensitive time?
Empathy. I think people lack empathy. I think as human beings, we're very quick to be dismissive. I struggle with that. I think that everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. I think when someone reaches out and they're heartfelt and they're sincere, you should, even if it's telling them, I'm sorry, I'm not interested, give that person a chance to know, because just think about what they're trying to do, right? There was someone that asked me a question the other day on Connect, and I said, listen, persistence doesn't mean being annoying, okay? There's ways like create value in persistence. So if I send you a cold email and I'm like, hey, Anas, this is who I am. This is what I'd like to talk to you about. You don't respond. Let 2 weeks go by and be like, hey, I recently read this announcement from your enterprise that you guys did this. I want you to know that we've been able to secure X. So what am I doing now? I'm updating you with value. I'm not just nudging you again. The thing I hate the most is you missed my email, or I'm just bringing this to the top of your inbox. Delete. Like you're not, there's no effort here, right? You've triggered the follow-up in your email and you're just pushing emails to say, oh, I emailed so-and-so. That's not how it works. You gotta create value for someone that you don't know. And that's one thing I always try to teach people. I was at an event recently with Jill, and this 16-year-old kid sent me a message, and he's like, I'm 16 years old. I've interviewed this person, this person, this person. I'd love to be able to talk to her because I want to make sure that I'm rounding out the information I share with my viewers. And I was like, wow, good for you. I was like, absolutely. I'm like, you get 30 minutes because here's someone 16 years old. He's looking to build a career. And when I got to meet him in person and I met his parents, I go, where does this come from? We're like, it's just him. We've never pushed this. It's just him. And I was like, this is outstanding. I was like, well, I told him, I said, my expectation is to see you being a big anchor on the news one day. He goes, that's what I'm working for. Amazing. Kid sat down with the Prime Minister of Canada, with this politician, with this government official, with this head of state. It's unbelievable. 16 years old. So, that's where what you and I are talking about can be completely debunked, right? It's very easy to put everyone in the collective we, but that kid is, I told him, I was like, read the book, Purple Cow by Seth Godin. You are the purple cat. And he's like, what's that mean? And I was like, read the book. You'll understand what I'm talking about. So
yeah, books are far and few between nowadays. Very, very few people speak about. But I mean, I have a huge collection of books. I absolutely love them. But very few people do read them. And considering what you're building, how is that going to be relevant in the next 50?
Look, I don't even think about I don't think of it as I'm building something. A lot of times I just look at it from moving from point A to point B in this timetable. And that's the journey. I don't view it as building anymore because what happens is there are too many external factors that rattle foundations in business. And I'm in a multi-pronged type of business where I'm not just widgets. I'm widgets, I'm planks, I'm screws, I'm fibers, I'm everything. So for me, if I see that there's resistance here, I'm like, I'll keep someone on the team working on that, but I'm now going to focus my attention here. And I'm like, hey, get these 3 steps accomplished. When you get those steps accomplished, come back to me and then let me jump back in. So I try to, I don't micromanage, but I have a very macro view of everything we're trying to do. And what I try to figure out is what is the core message that we are trying to push? And from there, I kind of set these wheels in motion and figure out, is this something we should do? Is this something we should not do? And remember, the truth is success begets success, right? We have a profile piece coming out in the New York Times any day now. It's been going on since February. That's how long these things take. And, my opinion is it's a profile piece in the New York Times. A lot of people are going to see it. My business partner thinks it's a hit piece. I'm like, what's it a hit piece on? You're not a politician. You're a social advocate for change for the better. You have been outspoken about the inefficiencies of the state that you grew up in, which you no longer live in. And you have basically put out information on why we're sicker than ever and fatter than ever and all of these different things. So what's the hit piece? And she's like, I don't know. I think it's a hit piece, but I'm not going to belabor that with her. I look at it as like, this is a fantastic opportunity. It's a New York Times profile piece. Whatever you think of the newspaper, you think of the newspaper. But from a credibility point of view, you must be doing something right if the New York Times is going to dedicate 4,000 words to you and your business, for the second time. I'm sorry, what was the question that you were asking me?
What would be relevant in 50 years? It's more about legacy than the relevant side of it, right?
Legacy, for me, I've always been of the school is I genuinely care about people and I want to help people. And for me, there's nothing better than a thank you. Thank you goes a long way because I've done something for someone and it's hopefully sparked an interest, given them a better move on the chess game that they're playing, and it's given them a North Star that they might have not been able to find on their own.
No, that's for sure. And if you were to give your last, well, I don't want to say last because that's a very negative framing. If you were to give a 30-second speech to the world, what would it be?
I would tell people to please put down your phone and talk to the person next to you because you never know how they could change your life or how you can change their life. And believe it or not, I have established friendships in that way. And I think human beings are creatures that were created to engage with other human beings. It's all fine to want to have your head in your phone, but there's something very special when you have a connection with someone. It happened last night. Random person, just started talking to him. Ended up that we knew two of the same people. Would have never known that. And now he's a friend.
That is brilliant. And Giancarlo, I want to say to you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for coming onto this podcast and sharing your knowledge and inspiring people. I'm sure there's many more to come as well. And I really appreciate the time that you...
Absolutely. No, thank you. Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your viewers. What you're doing is fantastic. These are things that didn't exist when we were growing up that do now exist. And so it's fantastic. So thank you again for the opportunity. And I hope your viewers get some takeaway from this.
No, indeed. Thank you so much, Giancarlo. Absolute pleasure.
Absolutely.